The midday sun blazed mercilessly on the asphalt of I-35, and Lennon Graves felt every drop of sweat trickling down her forehead as she stared at the smoking hood of her 2010 Honda Civic. This stretch of highway on the outskirts of Wichita, Kansas, was known to local drivers as the middle of nowhere, miles of deserted road where even truckers preferred not to stop. Perfect, Lennon, just perfect, she muttered to herself, kicking the front tire harder than necessary. The heel of her sandal nearly broke in the process, and she had to balance herself by gripping the car door. Thank goodness you decided to skip the mechanical inspection to buy that special edition of Mark Twain. Her phone proudly displayed 0 signal bars, as if mocking her. The interview with the retired writer in Newton, which could be the centerpiece of her investigative book about the secrets of Kansas elite, was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. It was now 2:20, and she was literally in the middle of nowhere. The sound of a powerful engine cut through the suffocating silence. Lennon looked up and saw a black BMW X6 approaching at moderate speed. For a moment, she considered not waving. After all, who drove cars like that on I-35 in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon? But when the car slowed down, she realized she didn't have many options. The driver stopped a few meters ahead and walked toward her. Lennon had to blink twice to make sure she wasn't having heat-induced hallucinations. The man approaching looked like he'd stepped straight out of a fitness magazine. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair slightly tousled by the wind, and a presence that managed to be both intimidating and magnetic at the same time. "Car trouble?" he asked, with a deep voice that carried an accent she couldn't immediately identify. "No, I'm here sunbathing because I love the smell of hot rubber," Lennon replied, unable to control her sarcasm. Heat and stress always brought out her sharper side. "Sorry, yes, the car just died." The man smiled discreetly, and Lennon noticed he had a small scar on his left eyebrow. There was something familiar about that face, but she couldn't identify what. "Patrick Holland," he said, extending his hand. "And you seem to be in quite a predicament." "Lennon Graves," she replied, shaking the offered hand. The skin was rough, from someone accustomed to physical work, but the nails were well maintained. "Journalist in distress, to be more precise." Patrick opened the Civic's hood and made a face that did inspire optimism. "Radiator. Probably the thermostat too. This car isn't leaving here today." "Fantastic. My afternoon is officially ruined." Lennon looked at her watch again. "I have a very important interview in Newton, and if I don't get there—" "Newton, I can give you a ride," Patrick offered, closing the hood. "I'm heading that way anyway." Lennon hesitated. Accepting rides from strangers wasn't exactly what her mother, Margaret, would consider a sensible decision. But Patrick didn't look like a serial killer. Although thinking about it, the most dangerous serial killers were precisely those who didn't look dangerous. "You're not going to kidnap me, are you?" she asked, half serious, half joking. "No, but I might torture you with country music the whole way," Patrick replied, and this time the smile reached his eyes. Lennon laughed despite herself. "I'll take the risk, but only if you promise not to play anything by Blake Shelton." "Promise. Is Keith Urban also banned?" "Now you're pushing it. A man has to have limits." While Patrick called a tow truck to haul the Civic, Lennon observed his gestures. There was a natural elegance in his movements, as if he was accustomed to solving problems efficiently, but she also noticed that he constantly looked around, as if expecting something or someone. "Done. Problem solved," he said, putting away his phone. "They'll take your car to a shop in Wichita. You can pick up the keys tomorrow." "Thank you. Seriously, you just saved my journalistic career." "I doubt it's that dramatic." "You don't know me," Lennon replied, getting into the car. "I'm the type of person who can turn a simple trip to the grocery store into an epic adventure." The BMW's interior was impeccable, with a subtle aroma of leather and something reminiscent of sandalwood. Patrick turned on the air conditioning, and Lennon sighed with relief at the cold air. "So, what's a journalist doing on a Tuesday in this infernal heat on a road to the countryside?" Patrick asked, pulling away from the shoulder. "Chasing stories." I'm writing a book about the behind-the-scenes of Kansas elite. You know, those people who appear in society columns, but nobody really knows where their money comes from." Patrick visibly tensed for a moment, but recovered quickly. "Interesting. Must be challenging work." "You have no idea, especially when it comes to certain family empires that prefer to keep their secrets well guarded. And do you believe all these people have skeletons in their closets?" "Not necessarily skeletons. But everyone has a story, right? Especially those who built fortunes overnight." Lennon glanced at Patrick sideways. "You seem to know that world well." "Let's say I've had some encounters with the local elite," he replied, with a tone indicating the subject was closed. The rest of the trip proceeded with light conversation about literature. Lennon was surprised to discover that Patrick had read almost all the American classics, and about the Kansas landscape unfolding through the windows. Wheat fields alternated with small towns that seemed frozen in time. When they reached Newton, Patrick stopped in front of the house where the interview would take place. "Here's your final stop. I don't know how to thank you." "Really?" Lennon grabbed her bag and opened the door but hesitated. "Are you sure we haven't met before? Your face seems very familiar." Patrick looked away. "I have a common face. Must be that." Lennon wasn't convinced but didn't insist. "Well, thank you again. If you ever need a journalistic favor—" "I'll remember," Patrick said, but something in his tone suggested that would never happen. Lennon got out of the car and waved as he drove away. She stood there for a moment, trying to identify why that man awakened such a strange sensation in her, a mixture of attraction and curiosity she hadn't felt in a long time. Only when she entered the house for the interview did it click. The living room wall was decorated with photographs of famous athletes, and one of them showed a young man holding an Olympic medal. The face was younger, less marked by life, but it was unmistakably Patrick Holland. Patrick Holland, the former Olympic medalist who had disappeared from the media after a scandal involving his company. Patrick Holland, heir to one of the country's largest fitness empires. Patrick Holland, who was exactly the type of person she was writing her book about. Lennon spent the rest of the interview with the writer thinking about Patrick. Every question she asked, every answer she received, her mind kept returning to that unusual encounter on the road. It couldn't be a coincidence. In 20 years of journalism, she had learned that coincidences were almost always signs that something bigger was happening. "Sorry, Mr. Thompson. Could you repeat the last part?" she asked, realizing she had completely lost track. The retired writer smiled patiently. "I was saying that the real secrets of the elite aren't in the newspapers, dear. They're in the silences, in the things that aren't said." "In the silences," Lennon repeated, taking notes. "What do you mean?" "Take the Holland case, for example. Everyone knows Patrick disappeared from the media after that scandal with his former partner, but nobody asks why a man who was always upright would suddenly become a con artist." Lennon almost dropped her recorder. "Do you know the Holland family?" "My dear, I know everyone in this state. William Holland was my neighbor when we were young. Honest man, hard-working. Patrick takes after his father. But his aunt's family—" The old man grimaced. "Victoria Holland is capable of anything to protect the Holland reputation. Anything. And about the scandal? Do you believe Patrick is innocent?" "I believe there are very powerful people interested in destroying that young man, and I believe he's running not out of guilt, but out of fear." 2 hours later, Lennon was at the bus stop in Newton, waiting for transport back to Wichita, when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Lennon? This is Patrick. Patrick Holland." She felt a flutter in her stomach. "How did you get my number?" "You dropped your business card in the car. Thought you might need it." "Ah." Lennon looked in her bag and confirmed the card wasn't there. "Thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask if you'd like to have dinner with me tomorrow, to thank you for the company on the trip." "You don't need to thank me. I'm the one who owes favors." "Then accept the invitation and well be even." Lennon hesitated. Having dinner with Patrick would be the perfect opportunity to interview him for her book, but it would also be ethically questionable, since he wouldn't know her real intentions. "I accept," she said, before her conscience could stop her. But I choose the place. As long as it's not a pizza buffet, I'll accept anything. What prejudice against pizza buffets? I'll take you somewhere special. I'm looking forward to it. Pick you up at 8? Perfect. Lennon hung up with a silly smile on her face. Then she remembered that Patrick was her investigation subject, and the smile disappeared. Then it returned, because she couldn't deny she was excited to see him again. The next day, she spent an hour choosing what to wear. She couldn't look too dressed up. After all, it was just a casual dinner. But she also couldn't look too relaxed. She opted for a simple navy blue dress and low sandals. "Fitzgerald, what do you think?" she asked her cat, who was lying on the bed watching the chaos in the closet. "Too investigative journalist or too interested woman?" Fitzgerald meowed a response that Lennon interpreted as, "You're overcomplicating things." "Thanks for the honesty, sweetheart." Patrick arrived punctually at 8, driving the same BMW from the day before. Lennon went down quickly, not giving him time to come up and see her messy little apartment. "So, what's the special place?" he asked as she got into the car. "Old Town. There's a barbecue joint that's an unofficial historical landmark of Wichita." Patrick laughed. "Barbecue? Seriously? You said you'd accept anything. Besides, it's the best place to experience the true Kansas spirit." "All right, but I'm paying." "Absolutely not. You've done enough for me already." Old Town was bustling with the typical early evening activity. Lennon guided Patrick to Joe's BBQ, which had been making the best ribs in the city for over 20 years. "2 Joe's specials," she ordered, without even consulting Patrick. "What exactly is Joe's special?" Patrick asked, looking suspiciously at the grill where the meat was being prepared. "Burnt ends, pulled pork, coleslaw, and a touch of Kansas City sauce. Trust me." They sat at a wooden table, surrounded by the movement and sounds of the restaurant. Patrick seemed completely out of place, but was making an effort to appear comfortable. "So," Lennon said after the food arrived, "are you going to tell me why you were driving alone on I-35 on a Tuesday afternoon? Are you always so direct with questions?" "Professional habit." "Sorry." Patrick took a bite of the barbecue and looked surprised. "Wow, this is really good. I told you. Now stop avoiding the question. I was going to handle some business in Hutchinson, nothing very interesting." "Business related to the gyms?" Patrick stopped chewing. "You know who I am. I found out yesterday after you left. I recognized you in a photo at the house where I did the interview. And you still agreed to have dinner with me? Why wouldn't I? Because most people see me as persona non grata since the scandal with Fernando." Lennon leaned forward. "Do you believe people really think you're guilty?" "It doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is what was published in the newspapers. Not all journalists are sensationalists, Patrick. Some of us still believe in investigating the truth. And what's your truth about me? That you look like someone who couldn't steal candy from a child, let alone millions from a company." Patrick laughed, but it was humorless laughter. "You'd be surprised what people are capable of doing when they feel cornered." "Do you feel cornered?" "Every day." They ate in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Lennon observed Patrick discreetly. There was a deep sadness in his eyes, as if he carried a weight that went far beyond the public scandal. "Can I ask you a personal question?" she asked. "You can try. Why did you disappear? I mean, why did you stay and fight to clear your name?" Patrick sighed. "Because sometimes running is the only way to protect the people you love." "Protect them from what?" "From me, from my choices, from the consequences of my actions." "That's very vague for an answer." "It's the only answer I can give right now." Lennon felt she was getting close to something important, but Patrick closed up like a clam. The rest of dinner proceeded with lighter conversations, but she couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. When Patrick dropped her off at home, he hesitated before leaving. "Lennon?" "Yes?" "Thank you. It's been a while since I had a normal evening." "Normal? Eating barbecue in Old Town is normal?" "For me, yes. I grew up here, remember? Before all this complication." Lennon smiled. "Someday you'll tell me about this complication." "Maybe." "Good night, Lennon." "Good night, Patrick." She stood on the sidewalk watching the car drive away, with the feeling that she had just opened a door she wouldn't be able to close again. Patrick Holland was much more complex than she had imagined, and much more interesting than would be prudent for her emotional balance. She climbed the apartment stairs, thinking about his expression when he talked about protecting the people he loved. There was something there, a story that went far beyond what had been published in the media, and Lennon Graves, investigative journalist, was determined to find out what it was. The next morning, Lennon woke up with the strange feeling that someone was watching her building. She opened the bedroom window curtain and saw a man in a dark suit standing across the street, apparently reading a newspaper. When she leaned in to get a better look, he casually walked away. "Paranoia, Lennon," she murmured to herself. "You're becoming a conspiracy theorist." But when she went down to buy bread at the corner bakery, the same man was there, now sitting on a park bench, fiddling with his phone. This time, she was certain she was being watched. Her phone rang the exact moment she entered the bakery. "Lennon?" It was Patrick's voice, but he sounded tense. "Patrick, good thing you called. I think someone's following me." "Where are you?" "At the bakery near home." "Why? Get out of there, now." "What do you mean, get out of there? Patrick, you're scaring me." "Lennon, please trust me. Leave the bakery and go to a public, crowded place." She left the bakery, looking in all directions. The man in the suit was no longer there, but that didn't reassure her. "Patrick, what's happening? I can't explain over the phone. Meet me at Town East Square, food court, in an hour. You can't just give me an order and expect me to obey without explanations." "I can, if it's to protect you." The call ended, leaving Lennon with more questions than answers. She returned home, packed a small bag with some essentials, and called her best friend. "Emma, I need a favor. From your tone of voice, is it the kind of favor like pick me up at the airport at 3 a.m, or the kind like lend me $100? The kind like, if I disappear, look for Patrick Holland?" "Lennon, what the hell is happening?" "I don't know yet, but I think I got myself into something bigger than I imagined." An hour later, she was sitting in the mall's food court, watching people pass by and trying to identify if anyone was paying too much attention to her. Patrick arrived 15 minutes late, with a somber expression she hadn't seen before. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sitting across from her. "I had to make sure I wasn't being followed." "You're being followed too?" "Lennon, I need you to tell me exactly what you're investigating for your book. All the details. Why don't you explain first why we're here?" Patrick looked around, as if checking whether anyone was listening. "Because you might be in danger because of me." "Danger how?" "There are people who would do anything to prevent me from clearing my name." "And if they find out you're investigating the Holland family?" "They what?" "Patrick, you're scaring me." Patrick sighed and ran his hand through his hair. "My Aunt Victoria has connections everywhere. Politicians, judges, journalists. She can end anyone's career who represents a threat to the family. And you think I represent a threat? You're an investigative journalist writing about the Kansas elite. Of course you represent a threat." Lennon leaned forward. "Patrick, I need you to be completely honest with me. Are you innocent of what they accused you of?" "Yes." "Then why don't you fight?" "Because Fernando has false evidence, but very well crafted. And because my aunt prefers that I disappear rather than expose the family's real problems." "What problems?" Patrick hesitated. "Lennon, if I tell you this, there's no going back. You'll become a target." "I'm already a target, apparently. It all started when my father died. William Holland was an honest man, but there were things in the company he didn't know about. Victoria was always responsible for the legal and financial part, and let's say she didn't always use legal methods to solve problems." "What kind of methods?" "Blackmail, bribery, intimidation. When Fernando set up the scheme against me, Victoria saw a perfect opportunity to get rid of me before I discovered what she had done." "And did you discover?" "I always knew something was wrong. But only recently did I get proof." "What kind of proof?" Patrick took an envelope from his pocket. "Documents showing how she eliminated other partners over the years, including—" He stopped, as if he had said too much. "Including what, Patrick?" "Including your father." Lennon felt the world spin. "What?" "Samuel Graves was a partner of my father at the beginning of the company. Victoria forced him out with threats. He disappeared shortly after." Are you saying that my aunt might have... I don't know what she did exactly, but I know your father left the partnership in fear. And you might have inherited more than just his journalistic talent. Lennon had to lean on the table. 22 years without knowing why her father had disappeared, and now she discovers it might have been because of the family of the man she was beginning to fall in love with. I need to go, she said, standing up abruptly. Lennon, wait. No, I need to process this. She stopped and looked at Patrick. I need to decide if I can trust you. You can I? Because so far you've only told me things when it was convenient for you. Patrick stood up too. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need honesty. Then give me a chance to be honest. Completely honest. Lennon looked at him for a long moment. There was something in his expression that made her want to believe, but her journalistic experience screamed for her to be careful. One chance, she said finally. But no more lies, no more half-truths. I promise. And Patrick, if you're lying to me, if this is all some kind of manipulation, it's not. Then prove it to me. Patrick nodded. Meet me tomorrow night. I'll show you all the evidence I have. All of it. Where? My ranch. It's isolated. No one will bother us. Lennon hesitated. Going to Patrick's house, alone, after everything he had just revealed, did seem like the most sensible decision. Bring a friend if you want, Patrick said, as if he had read her thoughts. Or leave the address with someone. I understand your caution. All right, tomorrow night. Lennon? Yes? I'm sorry about your father, about you getting involved in this because of me. It wasn't because of you, Patrick. It was because of the truth, and the truth doesn't belong to anyone. She walked away, leaving Patrick alone in the food court, with the feeling that she had just opened a Pandora's box that neither of them would be able to close. Lennon spent the entire night awake, researching everything she could find about Samuel Graves and his former partnership with William Holland. She found old company records, photographs in local newspapers from the 1990s, and even an article about the mysterious disappearance of one of the founding partners. At 6 in the morning, she called her mother. Mom, I need to talk to you about Dad. Lennon, it's 6 in the morning. Did something happen? I need to know the truth about why he disappeared. The silence on the other end of the line was so long that Lennon thought the call had dropped. Mom? Come here. There are things I should have told you a long time ago. 2 hours later, Lennon was sitting in her mother's small kitchen in the countryside, listening to a story that changed everything she thought she knew about her family. Your father didn't disappear of his own free will, Margaret said, stirring coffee with trembling hands. He was threatened. A woman showed up here, elegant, well-dressed, saying it would be better for everyone if Samuel disappeared for a while. A woman? What was she like? Blonde, light eyes, very serious. She spoke with an authority that chilled the blood. She said Samuel knew too much about certain company irregularities. Victoria Holland. Do you know her? Let's say our paths crossed indirectly. Lennon held her mother's hand. Mum, why did you never tell me? Because your father made me promise I wouldn't tell until you were adult enough to understand. And then I was afraid you'd go after her. Where is he now? I don't know. He sends money every month through a bank account, but never says where he is. The last letter I received was 6 months ago. Do you have the letters? All of them. They're in his room. Lennon spent the next few hours reading her father's letters, piece by piece, assembling the puzzle of 22 years of forced exile. Samuel Graves had discovered that Victoria Holland was laundering money through the company, using the gyms as a front for illegal operations. The last letter, dated 8 months ago, said, Margaret, my beloved, I think I finally found a way to come home. There's a young Holland who might be willing to face his aunt. If this works out, we'll be together again soon. Lennon felt her heart race. Patrick had mentioned that he had only recently gotten evidence against Victoria. Was her father counting on him to clear the family name? At 5 in the afternoon, she was back in Wichita, preparing for the meeting with Patrick. She called Emma and gave her the ranch address, instructing her friend to call the police if she didn't hear from her by midnight. Are you sure this is a good idea? Emma asked. Meeting a man who might be involved in your father's disappearance. He wasn't involved. Actually, I think he might be the only person capable of bringing my father back. Patrick's ranch was 40 minutes from Wichita, in a rural area surrounded by wheat fields. The property was modest compared to what Lennon expected from a billionaire. A simple 2-story house, a small pool, and lots of green around. Patrick received her on the porch, accompanied by a huge German shepherd who sniffed her suspiciously before accepting a scratch behind the ears. "This is Moses," Patrick said. "He's more suspicious than I am, which is saying a lot." "Hi, Moses," Lennon said, crouching down to make friends with the dog. "Do you take good care of your owner?" Moses seemed to approve of her, wagging his tail slightly. "Impressive," Patrick commented. "He usually takes weeks to like someone. I have a special gift with stubborn animals." "Stubborn animals? Suspicious dogs, aloof cats, reclusive journalists?" Patrick laughed, and Lennon noticed how much more handsome he became when he relaxed. "Come in. I made coffee and some cookies my mother used to make." The house inside was surprisingly cozy. Rustic furniture, lots of books, family photographs on the walls. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed, "A millionaire lives here." "Did your mother cook?" Lennon asked, observing a photo where a blonde woman hugged a teenage Patrick. "She still does. She's still alive, but she has Alzheimer's. She's in a specialized clinic. I'm sorry. The cookies are one of the few recipes I still remember well. She tried to teach me when I was a child, thinking it would be useful when I left home to compete." They sat at the dining table, and Patrick placed a thick folder between them. "This is all the evidence I managed to gather about Victoria," he said. "Financial documents, recordings, emails. Everything shows how she's been using the company to launder money for over 20 years. Lennon opened the folder and found an impressive amount of evidence. Detailed spreadsheets, bank statements, correspondence with shell companies. "Patrick, this is enough to put your aunt in jail for the next 50 years. "I know, but it's also enough to destroy the company and put thousands of people on the street. Besides," he hesitated. "Besides what? Besides, she has my mother." Lennon looked up from the documents. "What do you mean she has your mother?" "The clinic where my mother is interned belongs to a friend of Victoria's. If I expose this information, she might make my mother have complications in treatment. That's blackmail. That's the reality of my life for the past 2 years. Lennon continued leafing through the documents until she found a separate folder with the name Samuel Graves, written by hand. "Patrick, I found some information about your father. It's not much, but inside the folder were copies of bank documents showing regular transfers to an account in Samuel Graves' name, plus an address in Topeka." "He is in Topeka?" Lennon asked, her voice choked. "He is, and from what I could discover, he's been trying to gather evidence against Victoria for years. Actually, it was through a clue he left that I managed to find part of this evidence." "Have you talked to him?" "Not yet. I was waiting to be absolutely sure I could protect him before making contact." Lennon felt her eyes fill with tears. 22 years. 22 years separated from her father because of one woman's greed and cruelty. "Hey," Patrick said softly, extending his hand to touch hers. "We're going to bring him back, I promise." "How? You said yourself you can't expose Victoria because of your mother." "I found a way. But it will require you to trust me completely." "I'm listening." "Fernando, my former partner, isn't just a con artist. He's also being blackmailed by Victoria. I discovered she has compromising information about his illegal business dealings that predate our partnership. You want to form an alliance with the man who destroyed your reputation? I want to offer him the chance to redeem himself. If we can get Fernando to testify against Victoria, we have a real chance of bringing her down without putting our loved ones at risk. And if he refuses, then we'll have to find another way." Lennon looked again at the documents scattered on the table. So much information, so many lives destroyed by one person. "Patrick, can I ask you a personal question? After everything we've already talked about, I think we've lost the right to privacy. Why are you doing this? I mean, you could just disappear, start a new life somewhere else. Why are you risking everything to face Victoria? Patrick was silent for a long moment, looking out the window where night was beginning to fall. Because I fell in love. Lennon felt her heart skip a beat. With whom? With a stubborn journalist who believes the truth is worth any risk. Patrick, Lennon, I know this complicates everything. I know it mixes things up in a way that might not be sensible. But I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel. And what do you feel? That you're the first person in years who looks at me and sees Patrick, not the scandal. That when I'm with you, I remember who I was before all this became hell. Lennon got up and walked to the window. The first stars were beginning to appear in the clear countryside sky. This is crazy, she said, more to herself than to Patrick. What? Falling in love with you in the middle of all this? Patrick approached her. Did you fall in love with me? I'm trying not to fall in love, but you're not making things easy. I don't want to make it easy. I want you to fall madly in love with me, like I fell in love with you. Lennon turned to face him. They were close enough for her to see the small wrinkles around his eyes, the scar on his eyebrow, the way he looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Patrick, if we do this, I know. There's no going back. And if it goes wrong? And if it goes right? She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was a soft kiss at first, almost hesitant, as if both were testing whether it was real. Then it deepened, charged with all the tension and desire they had been accumulating since their first meeting on the road. When they separated, Patrick rested his forehead against hers. So let's do this, Lennon said. Let's bring down Victoria, bring my father back and clear your name. And then we'll see if two people who met in an impossible situation can build something real. I'd bet everything on that. Then you better be right about Fernando. Because if this goes wrong, well, both end up like my father, exiled or worse. It won't go wrong. How can you be so sure? Because now I have something worth fighting for. Lennon smiled, despite all the seriousness of the situation. You're very romantic for a billionaire businessman. And you're very brave for a sensible journalist. I think we make a good team. The best, Patrick agreed, kissing her again. Outside, Moses barked once, as if approving their plans, or as if warning about something approaching in the darkness. The next morning, Lennon woke up on Patrick's living room sofa, covered with a blanket that smelled like fabric softener and him. Patrick was in the kitchen, making coffee, whistling softly a tune she didn't recognize. Good morning, she said, stretching. Good morning, sleeping beauty. Coffee, please, and thank you for being a perfect gentleman last night. Well, you fell asleep in the middle of our conspiracy against my aunt. It wouldn't have been very romantic to wake you up. Conspiracy. That makes everything sound so dramatic. Lennon, we're literally planning to bring down one of the most powerful women in Kansas. It is dramatic. Patrick served the coffee and sat beside her. In the morning light, with disheveled hair and stubble, he looked more human, less unreachable. So, what's the plan? Lennon asked. First, we need to make contact with Fernando. I'm going to call him today and arrange a meeting. Will he agree to see you? He will. Fernando is greedy, but he's not stupid. He knows that if Victoria can blackmail him once, she can do it again. And if he tries some trick, that's a risk we'll have to take. Lennon's phone rang. It was Emma. Hi, Em. Lennon, where are you? There are 2 men asking about you here at the building. What kind of men? The kind who wear black suits and sunglasses even on cloudy days. Lennon looked at Patrick, who was already getting up. Em, get out of there now. Go to your mother's house and stay there until I call you. Lennon, you're scaring me. I'm supposed to scare you. Go, please. She hung up and turned to Patrick. Victoria knows we're together. That was faster than I expected. Patrick grabbed the car keys. Let's go. We can't stay here. Where are we going? To the only place she won't look for us. What place is that? Her house. Lennon looked at him as if he had gone insane. Patrick, that's suicide. No, that's strategy. Victoria is sending people to look for us because she thinks we're running. The last thing she expects is for us to show up at her door. And what are we going to do there? Confront her. Show her we know everything and give her a chance to negotiate. She won't negotiate. You said yourself she's capable of anything. She is capable, but she's also intelligent. And intelligent people know when they're cornered. 40 minutes later, they were stopped in front of an imposing mansion in the upscale neighborhood of Eastborough. Victoria Holland's house was everything Patrick's ranch wasn't. Ostentatious, intimidating, designed to impress and intimidate. Last chance to change your mind, Patrick said. I'm not changing my mind. But if we die here, I want you to know I consider this a terrible first impression for meeting the family. Patrick laughed despite the tension. I promise the next family meeting will be more peaceful. They walked to the front door, passing through a perfectly manicured garden and a fountain that probably cost more than Lennon's car. Patrick rang the doorbell. Who is it? Came a voice through the intercom. Patrick Holland. I came to talk to my aunt. There was a long pause. Then the gate opened automatically. The house door was opened by a blonde, elegant woman of approximately 60 years. Victoria Holland was exactly as Lennon had imagined, beautiful in a cold way, with blue eyes that seemed capable of freezing water. Patrick, she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What an unexpected surprise. Hi, Aunt Victoria. This is Lennon Graves. Victoria's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly when they heard the surname. Graves, like the old partner of your father. Like my father, Lennon corrected. Ah, Samuel's daughter. Victoria stepped away from the door. Come in. I imagine you have a lot to discuss with me. They were led to a living room that looked more like a museum. Antique furniture, expensive artwork, everything arranged with military precision. Coffee? Water? Victoria offered, as if she were receiving social visitors. We don't want your courtesies, Patrick said. We want answers. Answers about what, dear? About Samuel Graves, about Fernando, about money laundering through the company. Victoria sat in a leather armchair, crossing her legs elegantly. You came here to accuse me of crimes? We came to give you a chance to negotiate, Lennon said. Negotiate what, child? You stop persecuting my father, withdraw the threats about Patrick's mother, and return control of the company to him. In exchange, we don't publish everything we know about your illegal activities. Victoria laughed, but it was a humorless sound. You think you can blackmail me? It's not blackmail. It's justice, Patrick replied. Justice? Victoria stood up. Patrick, you have no idea what I did to build this company. Your father was a dreamer, an idealist. If it were up to him, we'd still have a neighborhood gym. So what? At least it would be honest. Honesty doesn't pay the bills, dear. Honesty doesn't build empires. Victoria, Lennon said, taking an envelope from her bag, we have documents that prove everything. Bank transfers, shell companies, bribes. It's enough to put you in jail for the next 20 years. You don't have the courage to use that, don't we? Patrick took his phone from his pocket. Fernando already agreed to testify against you, as at this moment delivering copies of all documents to the FBI. Lennon looked at Patrick surprised. When had he talked to Fernando? Victoria's face lost some of its composure. You're bluffing. Want to bet? Victoria walked to the window, looking at the garden. When she turned again, her expression had changed. No longer the mask of civility, but something more dangerous. You don't know who you're messing with. We know exactly, Lennon said. We're messing with a woman who destroyed families, ruined lives, and used threats and violence to maintain her power. But it's over. The game is finished. The game only ends when I say it ends. Victoria picked up the phone and dialed a number. Bring him. Who are you calling? Patrick asked. The answer came 5 minutes later, when 2 men entered the room, escorting a third. Lennon felt the world stop when she recognized the face of the man she hadn't seen in 22 years. Dad? Samuel Graves was older, thinner, with completely grey hair. But they were the same gentle eyes she remembered from childhood. Lennon, he said, and his voice was choked. My little girl, how did you... Lennon turned to Victoria. What is he doing here? Samuel came to me last night, offering a deal. His freedom in exchange for your silence. Dad, you didn't need to. I did, Samuel said. You're more important than any revenge. Patrick positioned himself between Victoria and them. The deal doesn't hold any more. You have no bargaining power. Don't I? Victoria smiled coldly. Have a good life together, but remember, I still have my contacts. And accidents happen. Are you threatening us? I'm making a promise. It was then that the living room door opened again, and Fernando Lasmar entered, followed by 2 FBI investigators. Victoria Holland, said one of the investigators. You're under arrest. Epilogue. 6 months later. The sun was setting over the Arkansas River, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lennon was sitting on the grass, watching Patrick teach Moses to fetch a stick in the water. Beside her, Samuel was reading a book, enjoying his first sunset in freedom after more than 2 decades. You know he's going to marry you, don't you? Samuel said, without looking up from his book. Dad, you've known Patrick for 6 months. I know enough, and I've known you for 32 years. I've never seen you so happy. Lennon smiled, watching Patrick clown around with the dog. Victoria's trial had been quick and conclusive. With Fernando's testimony and the evidence Patrick had gathered, she was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The company returned to Patrick's control, who immediately implemented total transparency policies. And you? Lennon asked. How are you adapting? It's still strange. 22 years is a long time, but your mother has been patient. She loves you, Dad. She always has. I know. It's just hard to believe it's really over. Patrick approached, wet and with sand stuck to his clothes. What are you talking about? About you, Samuel said with a mischievous smile. Lennon was telling me you snore. I don't snore, Patrick protested. You do, Lennon said, laughing, like a freight train. Moses, did you hear that? They're conspiring against me. The dog barked once, as if agreeing with the women. Even the dog, Patrick muttered, throwing himself on the grass next to Lennon. They stayed there in silence for a few minutes, watching the waves. Lennon thought about how her life had completely changed in a few months. The book she had written about the case had become a national bestseller. Patrick had proposed a partnership in a new journalistic project focused on corporate investigation, and she had discovered it was possible to fall madly in love with someone even in the midst of chaos. Patrick, she said, resting her head on his shoulder. Thank you. For what? For stopping to help me on that road. Actually, Patrick said, kissing the top of her head, I think you're the one who saved me. You two are too sappy, Samuel commented, but he was smiling. Wait until you meet Grandma Betty, Lennon said. She's already planning the wedding. Wedding? Patrick sat up. Who said anything about a wedding? Nobody, Lennon said, laughing at his panicked expression. But you're right, Dad. He's going to propose to me. How can you be so sure? Because you already bought the ring. Patrick turned red. How do you know that? Emma saw you at the jewelry store last week, and because you get nervous every time someone mentions the word marriage. I don't get nervous. You do, Samuel said. You're getting nervous now. Patrick sighed. Okay, I bought a ring, but you weren't supposed to know yet. And when were you going to ask? When I found the perfect moment. Lennon looked around, the sun setting, the river almost deserted, her father finally free and happy beside them, Moses running in the water. Patrick? Yes? This moment is perfect. Patrick looked at her for a long moment, then smiled in that way that made her heart race. Samuel, he said, standing up, may I ask for your daughter's hand in marriage? You may, Samuel replied, but she's been an adult for a long time. The decision is hers. Patrick knelt on the grass, taking a small box from his pocket. Lennon Graves, will you marry me? Of course I will, she said, before even seeing the ring. But only if you promise we'll have more adventures like this. I promise our life will never be boring. Then I accept. Patrick put the ring on her finger, a simple and perfect solitaire, and kissed her while Samuel applauded and Moses barked, approving the union. Later, when they were heading home, Lennon thought about how life had strange ways of connecting people. If her car hadn't broken down on that road, if Patrick hadn't passed by at the exact moment, if she hadn't been brave enough to accept help from a stranger, what are you thinking about? Patrick asked, about how funny fate is. Do you believe in fate? I do now. I believe some people are made to find each other, no matter the circumstances, even if those circumstances include criminal families, blackmail, and a father missing for over 20 years. Especially under those circumstances, Lennon said, laughing. Conventional love stories are overrated. Patrick laughed and squeezed her hand. Then let's have a completely unconventional life. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Patrick Holland. Nor I from you, future Mrs. Holland. And as they drove back to Wichita with the first chapter of their lives together finally beginning, Lennon thought that not even in her most romantic dreams could she have imagined a story as perfect as theirs. After all, the best stories always begin with someone asking for help on the road.